Welcome back, everybody, to Critics Emporium, the podcast where we analyze different movies ranging from the worst to the best, and we have an exciting selection today. As you know, on last episode, we were analyzing the movie Blade Runner, which was quite a treat, must I say. Ridley Scott really did an amazing job when making it, and the actors helped tie it together so well. But with the scary season and Halloween coming really fast in and the month coming to a close, I thought it would be appropriate to do another movie by Ridley Scott that is a sci fi horror. And that movie is the original 1979 Alien movie. And that's because with the release of Alien Romulus, it is a great time to do this because it really did tie back together the entire series and did a great job at fulfilling the original movie and making it feel the exact same way. Today on this podcast, though, we have a special guest, and his name is Evan Martin, and he is a
Hello.
great movie analyst that is known for being a very heavy aliens enthusiast.
Yep, that's me.
Would you like to talk about that for a minute? What got you started on this, on your whole alien enthusiasm, reading tons and tons of books, comics, and collector of merchandising and paraphernalia?
Well, everybody has something that they latch onto as a kid, and for me, uh, Alien was the first sci-fi slash horror movie I ever watched that really just captivated my fascination. Both with the movie um, direction and effects, as well as the story and the meaning behind it. It all around just made me wonder at what people could make into movies. And Ridley Scott did an amazing job doing that. Um,
I would also like to commemorate the team that went with Ridley Scott. I mean, you have, albeit a really interesting person to in real life, but the amazing artist H.R. Geiger, was it?
Giger.
Giger, H.R. Giger, that worked with Ridley Scott, as well as who was the other artist? I do believe there was one more that worked on the actual human mechanical side and creation of the ships, while Giger worked on all of the alien and biomechanical stuff.
Well, I can't say I'm too familiar with that other artist, but I can concur that Giger definitely was the thought, uh, or rather, the alien was the thought child of Giger himself. As you can see in one of his earlier books, the Necronomicons that he created, that are art collections of what he thought the alien would look like. It's actually said that he saw it in a nightmare at first of his and then brought it into reality in his film.
Well, it certainly invaded my nightmares quite well.
Yes, as it did so with many different people.
Speaking upon that, though, let's talk about the hidden meaning that goes behind the film of Alien and why it struck out so much to the audience, even if they didn't realize it in the first place.
Right. So, well, first we'll probably be it'll be better to get a view of the time, a better perspective perhaps. So, at this point in time, 1979 when the movie came out, there weren't a lot of movies around with fantastic visual effects or really any deep philosophical probing type ideas. There were a lot of flashier, more cartoony looking films. The only one that was maybe close to Alien was Star Wars at the time, but it's a space opera rather than a horror film. Uh, Sorry, what was the question?
What was the hidden meaning behind Aliens? Because we obviously have the very stuff that we see visually, and it's all fantastic and really captivated us, as you'd said, especially with the time being there was a lot less of that really big um, sights to be seen. I mean, there was no CGI at that point. But what was the thought behind? What was the message that was trying to be conveyed in a film like this?
Right, so knowing the background and the movies that were around at the time, Alien really did jump off the screen as something very different because it's a representation of man's most primal fears. It's the personification of the unknown, of darkness, death, silence, and loneliness.
Hence why
It's a
the
rather dark film.
yeah, and this is hence why the xenomorph, or quote unquote the perfect organism, was, completely unknown and registered before finding it, and how it was able to cause such destruction and death upon the ship, being able to be unnaturally large and strong and tough in its own right, but being able to kind of change form and fit into things that you really wouldn't think it would be able to, and all of that.
Exactly. It's almost like an unconquerable foe, always lurking behind the story in the ship. It's always there somewhere, even if you don't see it. And that's why it links back to the psyche of human beings, because we always have unknown fears and questions in our mind that lie in wait, but we don't always face and sometimes can't overcome. Um,
Yeah, and this, I feel like this really gets solidified with when Romulus came out, because when we originally thought the alien was dealt with, it was shot into space. Nothing can survive the vacuum of space. I mean, there's no air, it's freezing cold. I mean, it's so cold that if you put two pieces of metal together, they would fuse together by just cold burning. And we saw that it had actually made a reappearance in Romulus, albeit it was dead, but it was confirmed through one of the androids that it was still alive and had wreaked havoc upon the ship as well, the space station.
yes, and again, that is indicative of psychological problems in the human mind. You might call it repressing something. So it may go away for a period of time, but it's not really gone until you fully face and conquer it. And in the original film, the alien never was killed, which is what allowed Romulus to happen.
Yes. I think it is also worth of note that the introduction of it, I mean, of course, we have the engineer's ship and the massive room of egg sacs that was completely unknown at the time, but it was, even after seeing a creature like the face hugger, we didn't know where it was gonna go from there. And the first time we ever see the true xenomorph was when it came out as the chest burster, which was a terrifying experience. I mean, the visuals that were used for blood, the feeling, the screams, the emotions being real.
Yes, that's very true. That is a very cool scene in the movie because the actors don't actually know what's going to happen except for the one who had the
Chest
blood
burster.
sac implanted in him.
Yeah,
That being uh, Kane.
that is
Um,
absolutely amazing that they tried to capture the exact um feeling of fear by not telling their actors.
Yeah, and that's why it's so authentic in the movie. And not only that, it's actually symbolic of Freudian anxieties about birth, childhood, and motherhood.
Really?
Um, yes,
Huh.
it's also linked to the character. Cain is the name of the character in the movie, and Cain also is a biblical character from Genesis, if you're familiar with the Bible.
Just how they
Um,
used David in the later movies.
exactly, these movies have strong links to religion and the lessons they teach about humanity as well, whether you believe in it or not.
I see. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the use of visuals throughout the entire movie. Now, we've been talking about the practical effects and all of that, but I want to look at the undertones, such as the lighting. The lighting was very monochrome throughout the movies. Of course, with the alien side, you have the black, you have the organics, a lot of dark blues seen with the laser that was shown in the egg sac room, as well as the xenomorph being fully black. But then you have the space station, and you have the Nostromo being, scientist and research vessels. So they're very white, very stale, and very different. So it creates a big dichotomy that shows the difference between the two through use of lighting.
That's true. That's true. So the Nostromo was actually a mining vessel, but
Mm.
you see the crew quarters are very well illuminated. The only truly sterile areas on the ship are the medical bay and the sleeping pods, both of which we get a very good look at, and they are almost entirely white and completely clean, which would indicate, human needs to keep some areas well organized and cleanly for the sake of our mental health, as well as our physical health. But most of the ship is dark and rusted, and um, it's got this sense of realism about it that makes it look like it's not in space, but rather just a dirty factory, perhaps, or something that
Hmm.
we would better relate to in the times when the movie was created.
I see. Now, I want to touch a note as well, while we're on this subject, about the use of real world sounds to give us the sense that we somewhat know, but at the same time don't. Because with the alien, how would you create such an iconic sound, even though we don't have actual aliens on Earth? And I did a bit of research into this, and we use a lot of distorted sounds that comes from actual animals. For instance, there is a mix between a mantis shrimp, a baboon, and a railway maintenance machine, if you believe it, to create different machine sounds, but as well as the clicking hisses and overall actual sounds that the creatures make during throughout the films.
I would totally believe it. And as much as their sounds are unique, their silence is just as audible in the film.
Oh
In fact,
yes,
more often than not, the creature is silent.
yeah, the age-old saying of silence it speaks louder than words. With I mean the first scene, true scene after the chest burster being with um, I forget which character was chasing after Jones when they had
Brett.
gone. Hmm?
Brett.
Brett, when they had gone into the room with all of those chains, and it's sitting there, and we even see it move, and all you hear is the slight clinking of the chains and nothing else.
And yes, it's meant to blend in with its environment, so you don't know it's there.
Yes, absolutely perfect and beautiful in every way. I mean, of course, terrifying, but yes.
Yes, of course. Silence is the audible version of the unknown for humans. So to be in a darkened room that is completely silent is almost scarier than being in a room that has sound.
Hmm. Well, that is certainly interesting indeed.
Yes, and it is interesting how the creature, when it does make noises, is matched with the cat in the scene where it first appears. So when the cat Jones hisses just before the alien strikes, and then the alien hisses, you'll note they sound similar, and that's to make it seem more animalistic in nature. And it's a juxtaposition. So the cat is hissing in fear, and the alien is hissing in conquest without fear. So it's an interesting dichotomy in nature when you have prey and apex predator both in the same room, and both are going to come out alive, but the person in the middle dies.
Despite showing the feralness, we also see the intelligence of the alien throughout the film itself, but in later iterations of the film, such as Aliens and Prometheus, Covenant, and all of
Yes.
those. Um, Now, the last thing I want to touch on before we run out of time for today's episode is I do know that the aliens or xenomorphs are supposed to are a hive mind. They have a queen, they have a hive, they have everything that we want to, and we do see the hive and the collection earlier in the movie, but we never see the actual central hive mind and the queen. And so, is the alien able to actually operate on its own, or was there secretly some queen out there controlling it?
So in the original movie, it was acting on its own. Yes, the alien itself reverts to a different state of mind in the absence of a queen, but is still able to operate. Its immediate function becomes to do what all life forms do, which is uh, reproduce. And to do that, it gathers hosts. Which, if you watch the special edition of the movie, you'll find that none of the characters that were captured by the alien were actually killed. They were cocooned, and it's because it's preparing them for parasites like the one that had attached itself to Cain. Eventually, the creature, being alone, would become a queen itself. Actually, it would metamorphosize, like a caterpillar might, into a butterfly. But that would be many, many years down the road.
And we do
So,
know that it was stopped by the film Romulus.
yes, when it was taken out of the stasis that it had entered in space, and began wreaking havoc among the station, they were able to kill it before that process could start.
Oh, very lucky for them. Now, was the xenomorph just a basic drone, or was it one of the higher tiers that happened to accidentally be a warrior or perhaps a runner of some kind?
No, it was just a drone, and that's part of what makes the movie so terrifying because these people were so completely helpless against something that they were completely unfamiliar with, but it wasn't even barely the strongest form of their kind. Um, it makes it gives an added level of terror, especially because at the time of the movie's release, there were no other aliens in existence, so all of that was purely speculation.
And then,
Um,
of course, we see those later iterations in Aliens when the Marines storm the hive, and you've got your drones, your warriors, your Praetorians, and eventually Ripley coming upon the Queen.
exactly, yes. Yes, and each tier has its own job, just like ants in an ant hive would, as the aliens are referred to as ants by the Marines in the movie. The queen, obviously, being the brains behind the method. The warriors are the soldiers. The drones do the hive work and collect resources, humans being considered a resource. And the Praetorians are the queen guard, so to say.
See. Well, this certainly was a very interesting and eventful conversation. I learned a lot about the alien structure, but more importantly, the symbology around aliens. There was a lot more religious symbolism than I had originally thought. I knew of the existence of David, but seeing Cain and possibly some other symbolisms that we weren't able to get to today is very enlightening, and it's all just a very masterful film developed by Geiger and either way, and Ridley Scott.
Yes, truly, it was the first of its kind and paved the way forward for many movies of its ilk afterwards.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for your time and being able to sit here and talk about such an amazing film with me today. Um, for the next coming month and the next movie that we'll analyze, we'll be going into the Lord of the Rings trilogy as well as The Hobbit, as while they may have been made in December, of course, they are very long and must be taken a lot of time, so we'll be reviewing them in November in order to see some more Christmas films in December. That is the lineup for next month's movie analyzation. Again, this was a fantastic time and very revealing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you have a fantastic day, and we'll hopefully see everybody that had viewed this next month when we review the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Awesome.